they just?
No, they are on and they're ready.
So even if it's a red light, it's fine?
Is it say mute?
Okay, so the switch is for me. That makes me feel better.
Does the light turn green?
It should be.
Hopefully your weather's keeping up everything. Okay.
It says mute.
Okay. It just doesn't. Hello? I can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
So you have to speak in.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Should I put it up higher then?
Yeah, a little bit.
Check, check, check.
They don't want to hear you. Did you call? Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, January 9th to order. Today we have 4 items on our agenda, and I haven't received any requests for continuance or withdrawal, so we'll take them in the order that they are listed on the agenda. Under announcements and appeals, I have no announcements, and we haven't had a meeting since last year, so there's been no appeal. I'd like to ask, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? No, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which is 920 Camino Viejo. You'd like to come up? Morning.
So this is 920 Camino Viejo. This is a 1.15 acre parcel. It's currently developed with a 3,578 square foot, 2-story single-family residence with an attached 468 square foot 2-car garage. The proposed project is for a new accessory building. It's up here. It is 820 square feet. It includes 320 square feet of storage area in the back, and it is an art studio and study with a half bath in the front. Also included in the project are a new pool and spa, and this is all a patio area and terrace. There's a new fence and gate proposed in the front, and new uncovered parking proposed. This project requires 2 discretionary applications or modifications, both related to the accessory space. The accessory space is located in the front yard, which isn't allowed by right by the zoning ordinance, and it also exceeds the 500 square foot limitation in the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does allow for garage space to be a total of 750 square feet. They just have the 468 square foot 2-car garage currently, and the remainder of the accessory space can't exceed 500 square feet. On larger lots like this, staff has considered in the past that the combination of those 2 areas could be appropriate in some instances. There's a maximum combined area of 1,250 square feet. And staff believes that that would be appropriate in this instance if the combined area of the garage and storage space not exceed 750 square feet, and then the remainder of the accessory space not exceed 500. Currently, this proposal, it's, I believe, 33 square feet, so it would have to be reduced some to meet that, but staff would have with regard to location, the zoning ordinance says that detached accessory buildings cannot be located in the front yard. In this case, the front yard would be the area here forward for this part of the property. So it is within the front yard. However, it's quite a distance from the right-of-way. Considering the orientation of the house, the topography of the site, staff believes that's appropriate in this instance. So staff's recommending approval of the project with that condition restricting the floor area of the garage storage space to 750 maximum, and the remainder to 500 square feet maximum. And Single Family Design Board reviewed this project, and on 2 occasions it's supportive of the project. That concludes my.
And then in regards to the guest parking, with it being in the front yard, there's adequate screening.
Right. The zoning ordinance allows it in the front yard if there's adequate screening, and the Single Family Design Board specifically looked at that in this case and said that the screening was adequate. The driveway does meander, so there is vegetation between the right-of-way and the parking, and again, there's quite a distance between the right-of-way and that new uncovered parking.
Great. If you'd like to state your name for the record and provide any additional comments.
Hi, my name's Susan Sherwin, and I don't know that I have additional comments beyond what has been written in my letter and that Dan has mentioned. I mean, because of the topography of the site, there isn't really any way to build behind the house. It's going to provide a lot of outdoor space. This proposal will provide outdoor space for the family that lives here because the house is quite sloped, so there isn't any outdoor space that's contiguous and flat with the home. And because these spaces are tucked underneath, especially this storage space is going to be completely invisible from anywhere, it seems like a reasonable approach to take and not have much impact with the for the neighborhood to especially to tuck that underneath, and these are tucked underneath.
And you've reviewed the condition, and the owners reviewed the condition, and you're okay with the condition?
With the limitations, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 920 Camino Viejo? No one. We did receive a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing concerns regarding the project. You had a chance to see. I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site and viewed the site and the surrounding neighborhood. And in regards to the modification requests, specifically the location of the accessory space, like Dan said, our zoning ordinance does limit the location of accessory spaces, and you need to get a modification. In this situation, I appreciate the fact that it is tucked underneath the deck and it's not popped in the, separate from the main house and the outside area. So I could support that modification to allow it to be in what technically is the front yard. Mm-hmm. When you view it, it doesn't necessarily look like the front yard, but I think that is appropriate location for the proposed accessory space. In regards to the size, you do have a large parcel. It's over an acre. It's zoned A2, and I noticed it had 20% slope, so it does meet the minimum size. And I think with the limitation that staff put on it with the condition, I think it's an appropriate size given, again, your lot size, the proposed location of it, the layout of it. I think it's consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance and can be supported. I asked you about the conditions. If you're in agreement with them, I don't think any additional conditions are necessary.
Okay.
I like the approach the design review board has taken with it in terms of screening and the landscape plan, and so I can make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve your project subject to that condition. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that sitting 10 days later. Okay. If that was to occur again, we'll contact you. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
The next item is 502 East Anapamu. If the applicant would like to come up. Morning.
Good morning.
Is Steve going to come? Okay, do you know, was he going to come for Peabody? Wait, yeah. Do you know? Is he going to come for the Peabody? Can you make sure he's coming? Tell him like 9:30 for Peabody. Steve Foley. Thanks.
Okay, so the next project, as you mentioned, is located at 502 East Anapamu. It's on the southeast corner of Anapamu and Olive Streets. There is existing development on the site. It's a 5,000 square foot site developed with a 3-story apartment building above parking and what was last recognized as uninhabitable crawl space basement area. The proposal today that requires a lot area modification is to recognize and permit some as-built improvements that were done on the site. And I'll point those out in this expanded site and floor plan here. Down below on the lower level, there was existing 3-car parking spaces. The proposal is to recognize the as-built conversion or creation of these individual spaces by making them individual garages with garage doors. And in doing that, it resulted in creating and enclosing this separate laundry space, creating about 256 square feet of additional floor area on the property. Also created was an approximately 472 square foot storage area for the units above. So the request today is due to the fact that the existing development on the site is non-conforming to residential density. The zoning ordinance states that any additional floor area on properties that are non-conforming to density must request a lot area modification in order to do that. What staff has been using as guidance during this interim period before the average unit size density program is fully implemented is we've been using the guiding principles of that program in order to determine whether or not we can support requested lot area modifications. In this case, the resulting average unit size, or the average size of the resulting units is in line with the program that staff is proposing, so we can support the requested lot area modification. In reviewing this project, there were a few concerns raised by transportation planning staff that we've been discussing, and as a result have some existing conditions of approval in the staff report and then 2 additional ones that have to do with vehicle maneuvering on the site. And I'll just flip back to the site plan to cover those. First is just to note on the plans when this project comes forward for a building permit, just to make clear that this area under here, that's storage and laundry area, not be made habitable space. Also, that it be noted on the plans that this driveway area, which they have a driveway off of Anapamu Street and a driveway off of Olive Street, that none of that area be used for parking, that it be made accessible for vehicles coming in off Anapamu to park and then exit on Olive. The 2 additional conditions have to do with maneuvering on the site, specifically when cars back out of these garages, their ability to make this turn and come out the shared driveway. In consultation with transportation staff, they've recommended that this existing hedge here, and you can see that in the aerial photo and also in the Google Street View image, it creates a pinch point that makes it difficult for vehicles to make this turn around the corner of the building without interference of that hedge. And so transportation planning staff has asked that we add a condition that the portion of this hedge, there's also a fence in the middle of that hedge, be trimmed back 4 feet from the eastern face of this building, which makes this turn feasible for a vehicle to exit the driveway. Also, there have been some HVAC units added in various spots throughout the property that we understand need to be relocated, and so asked that another condition be added that states that the relocated HVAC units not be placed in an area that would conflict with vehicles maneuvering on the site. So just clarifying that the space that exists on the site to maneuver is tight as it is, so to not further interfere with that, and then also to trim back that hedge and fence to make that turn more feasible. So with that, staff is recommending that the lot area modification be approved per the findings in the staff report and the 4 conditions. And I can go through these 4 conditions more clearly if you need me to.
You just brief, so 1 would be the accessory area, 2 would be the parking labeled on the plans, 3 would be the maneuverability, and then
4 would be just a statement that the relocated HVAC units be placed in areas that wouldn't interfere with vehicle maneuverability on the site.
so that's not, I didn't see that on this one, so this one would be the,
Right.
great, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and add any additional comments?
Yeah, my name is Ken Dixon, and I have no additional comments.
Well, that was easy. Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 502 East Anapamu Street? Seeing no one, did we receive any letters? Oh, thank you. I'm not sure. We just received a letter from Paula Westbury. So this is already done. Last in Buddha's to speak. I'll let you. It's a letter regarding your project. So I'll close the public hearing. I'd like to thank you for meeting Renee and I out on the site yesterday to get a look at the storage areas and get an idea of what the changes would be. It was helpful. Did you get a chance to look at the additional conditions?
Yeah, they're reasonable.
Okay, great. So in regards to the lot area modification, the request to change the carport type structure into a garage, and that's an appropriate improvement. In this instance, it mainly looks like it involved putting garage doors and then making solid walls within the carport structure. It was already 3-sided. It doesn't change the footprint. In regards to the separate laundry area and the understory area, again, it's using existing area that was occupied by the footprint. You're not adding additional bulk or area outside of that to the site, and I believe it is supportable. Again, given the planned implementation of our AD program, I think it is an appropriate improvement. My main concern when I went out to the site was parking. Given this area of the city, street parking is really limited. High school down the street, and street sweeping and that. So it is really important to make sure there's parking functional on site. So I would actually like to suggest, I know that in the staff report, it recommends that this driveway area be labeled on the plan as no parking. I would like to also, on this actual pavement itself, if it could be put no parking here. Both times when I went out to the site, there was a car parking in that area. And even the photos that were submitted has a car. So to make sure that these garages are accessible and used as parking. So that would be just an amendment to condition number 2, where it says the driveway located in the required setback shall be labeled on the plan as not to be used for parking. So put labeled on the plan and on site. And then I recognize the project is to add storage space to the units, given the small size and lack of storage. And so I would like to also put a condition that the garage is now, there's storage in there right now, that prior to the sign off of the final building permit, that stuff be removed. And it's my assumption that that's,
That's, yeah.
showing, that's why, excuse me, that's why the additional storage area is being provided. So just prior to the final sign off of this permit, that the garages be open and made available for parking.
Now, does that need to be reflected on the plans anywhere? Or
It'll just
It's
be a
just
part
gonna-
of the resolution, and then when the building inspector goes out to sign off final,
Confirm.
they'll
Okay.
confirm that all this stuff, it's cleared out.
Okay.
Great, so with those, so that would be an actual one additional condition, so five conditions. One would be the original accessory area 1. 2 would be the parking condition with the addition that it be painted on the ground. And 3 is the hedge one Renee was proposing to add. The 4th would be the air conditioning units, and then the 5th would be that the items stored in the garage be removed. So with those added conditions, I can make the finding outlined in the staff report and approve your project. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And then they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if that was to occur, Renee would contact you. Okay?
Very good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is 718 and 728 North Ontario Street. The applicant here. You guys are for Peabody's?
I represent the association. I expected Mr. Withoff to be.
Are you Peabody? Peabody. What we can do is skip over and come back. Do you have everyone you need for Peabody? Everyone for Peabody is here that you need.
Denise, the agent, is
Okay.
is
We
outside.
can do that. Oh, in the meantime, I'll call Alan.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Do you want to see if Steve Bolt? Yeah. Are you with Coast Village Road? Yes, we're going to jump over. We're going to go to Coast Village Road.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Tony.
Hi, Tom. Are you our spokesman?
Yes.
Anytime you're ready. We'll find it. Okay, anytime you're ready.
Tony Bauman, Planning Division. Suzanne Regal's absent today, so they asked me to fill in for her.
Thank you.
So this project is a let's see. This request is for a setback modification. The project is a 32,241 square foot site in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, developed with a 25-room hotel and a 1,507 square foot one-story restaurant. It's the intersection of Coast Village Road and Middle Road on the north side of Coast Village Road. The project involves alterations to the existing restaurant, including the demolition of a 36 square foot unpermitted storage enclosure, unpermitted construction of a 181 square foot addition to the restaurant service and storage areas, reconstruction of access stairways here on Coast Village Road, restriping the existing parking lot on here, demolition and relocation of an unpermitted trash enclosure, demolishing one here and reconstructing one here, and this involves the restriping. So the request is for a zoning modification for this as-built addition. Let's go to a larger site.
And just for clarification, Tony, the steps, I know we're returning to the application, but based on the feedback we got yesterday from Public Works, that they won't support the site steps on Middle Road, so we're going to remove that from the modification.
So this hatched area shows the unpermitted addition. It's got kind of a long history. I guess I'll let you ask questions if you have any questions about the history of it. But staff discovered through building permit plan check on an ABR application to do some other improvements to the restaurant. This area was never properly permitted. It didn't go through a modification process and never had the benefit of ABR review. So they're proposing to permit it now.
And then ABR, since you're on that one, ABR looked at it, and that's where they're talking about the roof lines. Was that the area?
Yes.
Okay.
We have pictures here. The ABR saw it Monday on consent calendar. Kirk Dean looked at it. So this is the portion of the building looking from this direction on Middle Road. And Kirk said, it's unfortunate the history here, but it's it's very close to the public view, close to the street, and unfortunately it's the least attractive part of the whole building on an otherwise nice building. So he couldn't support it as it exists. So he recommended cleaning it up and offered a suggestion to build a low parapet wall he was concerned about this irregular roof and the rooftop equipment, and offered a suggestion to trim off the eaves and clean it up by running a parapet wall. So having a low parapet around this portion of the roof to try to simplify it, clean it up, and he said he could support it.
And a lot of that equipment, sorry to interrupt, this unit is going to be removed and relocated. Part of our submittal right now for the exterior alterations is actually consolidating the new equipment.
It's name for the record?
David Watkins, project manager on this project for Sharon Associates Architects.
Sorry for interrupting. I just said you were on that one.
I think that's about it. It's hard to see, but he even sketched on with a red pen. Here. So staff feels that the modification is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. This is a C1 zone, which has a 10-foot setback. There's the property line and the 10-foot setback. So this addition, the majority of the addition is in the setback, even going beyond that into the right-of-way. The steep foliage here, I think, which public works right-of-way encroachments.
Yeah, I would like to hear from Public Works on the right-of-way encroachment. I don't know if you want to do it now or let the applicant present, and then. Well, why don't we actually let the applicant, and then I will have questions, and then we can do it that way. It's fine. Would you like to state your name for the record?
Sure. Denise Alec. Represent the owner. I'm the owner.
Okay.
And owner. We don't own the building.
Okay.
We purchased the restaurant in May.
Okay.
So we are only the tenant, relatively short-term lease. And we started this project, as Tony knows, by not wanting to change it too much, just cleaning up the inside. There was a lot of 30 years of deferred maintenance. And, of course, when you start to look at what needs to be repaired, it requires permits. And in the process of submitting our building plans, we aren't touching this area. We had no plans to touch that area. As a matter of fact, it was rebuilt between 2001 and 2007 and approved. But anyway, in the process, Brenda discovered, or someone discovered, that it was not permitted. And so here we are.
Could I say something too? Sure. So as Denise mentioned, through the discovery process, after we'd already submitted for our building submittal, we had a tenant improvement permit, and we also had an exterior alterations permit. This first showed up on the archive plans in 1980 at this current configuration. Even though it was approved by ABR, it wasn't specifically reviewed. This area was these stairs, the front stairs being constructed, and the second stairs that were getting removed were all proposed for site work. And it started showing up on the footprint, and it was approved in 1980 for all this stuff. For some reason, there's no case file in Public Works that this work and the stairs were ever, even though the permit was approved by everybody, there's no case files for any information recorded on the file. So they didn't necessarily recognize that permit from 1980. In 2001, a car actually hit this portion of the building, and an emergency permit was pulled through building department, and there was a clear documentation presented about exactly what portion of the building was hit. It does list the rear addition, the utility room, and what was going to be required to rebuild this like for like.
It was substantial.
Yeah.
Structural, foundation,
Full structural, full
mechanical.
roof framing, everything. It was approved over the counter, but again, there was no plans required or requested or ever submitted. And that was in 2001. Building approved it. And then in 2007, they actually, Brian Garnebeck went out there and building signed off on it. Again, no plans were ever requested, or somehow they just disappeared. So that did go through the permit process at that time. It was approved as such, but because there's no documentation of the exact configuration, that's where we're kind of in that limbo now, because it was rebuilt. You know, even whenever it was first built, it was built illegally. We recognize that. It was reviewed in 2001 and again in 2007, and it wasn't caught at those times, and it was rebuilt like for like in the same configuration. And we've kind of inherited this beast now, and all they're trying to do is they're not proposing it, they weren't building it, they're just trying to get it approved so we can get restaurant open again. And so we're not improving or proposing any alterations other than what's there to be permanent business.
And the other alterations aren't subject of the modification. So what are you doing in this area here?
Those stairs were built, they were approved in 1980, and they were built past the property line in the right-of-way. So the configuration was shown on the plans to stop at the property line. That didn't happen, so we're rebuilding those now.
Although, again, we weren't going to touch them.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so we're having to do that now in addition to bring that into compliance on something that was built improperly out in the field. So all we're doing now is building it per current code requirements, so that requires a little bit, deeper of the stairs because of, current code versus what was around then. So we're just pulling this back out of the right-of-way enough so that we can frame out and build and connect to the existing wood deck as it was.
So this denotion here, it says right away, but is this the property line?
The right-of-way is, yeah.
Is the property
yeah,
line
yeah.
in this side? But on, okay.
Retaining wall along there. We don't have, unfortunately, this van's parked right in front of us.
Yeah, I went out to the site and I did look at it, so I've seen.
Yeah,
I
here's the
just-
wall right here.
One of the documentation in here is talking about this one was being removed.
they won't support either of these, so we have to remove
This was never shown in any plan, so we agreed we were going to remove that. We were still trying to get this as is, but since it'll require a lot from transportation's aspect of bringing the sidewalk around and then, reframing this, providing lighting and handrails, we're just going to revoke that part from the modification. So we're not going to submit that anymore. But this just came to light, in the last couple of days.
Okay, and this is being pulled back some?
Yeah. Because
By
of
the-
current code, because of the
okay.
handrail extension and stuff, we have to get that 2 feet off the bottom riser.
Okay. And then that interior stuff in here, that's not subject to mods. Yeah, Steve, I guess my questions relate to, or maybe I'll open the public hearing, then I'm going to get into some. Is there anyone here who'd like to address the staff hearing officer on 1198 Post Village Road? I don't see no one. I did receive a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing concerns. Their intro sentence: this is done already, never should have. Leave all as is.
Oh, how nice. Thank you.
And it goes on, you can-
Please.
it's-
Oh, how nice is that? She is, but we feel the same.
expressing concern. So I'll close the public
Oh.
hearing.
That's-
In terms of the modification request, I don't have concerns with the stairway from Coast Village Road up to the entrance deck. I think that's appropriate. It gets people out of the driveway walking up. It provides a safe way to get up into the restaurant. So this one I don't have any concerns with. I do want to hear Public Works view on the improvements on Middle Road, what's proposing, what the encroachments they're asking, and then also, is there any plans for improving the intersection? I know over the last several years there's been in the paper accidents and stuff, and this does jet out into the street farther than up the street more, so I just wanted to hear what.
Steve Foley, Public Works Transportation Supervisor. Kind of the history of this is when this project first came in, the first comments were there's a lot noticed within the public right-of-way, and a lot of it was a lot of fact-finding of what was permitted and what wasn't permitted. And I think we've come to a conclusion that, and this is to clean up a lot of those items. As Dave pointed out, the stairways weren't supported because the stairways lead directly into the roadway. So we wanted to make sure that if the stairways were going to be part of that, that they connected to a pedestrian way. Eventually, someday, it's not necessarily in a plan right now, but obviously as part of missing sidewalks, where there are missing sidewalks, we would like to see those improvements be put in, and so that you would have that on Middle Road at some point. The encroachment of the building into the right-of-way, because of the topography, it was felt that that is an area that won't ever be needed for public improvements. So because of that, this was an exception where it was found that an encroachment, minor encroachment permit could be supported for that portion.
So it sounds like what you're saying, we don't necessarily have a plan for actual street changes in this area, but we may in the future point have the sidewalk curve around.
Correct. I'm not saying that there won't be street changes, but
right.
I would say that because there's a lack of sidewalk, that would be the first thing that Public Works would be looking at. And probably as part of that, they would be looking at, obviously as you're doing right-of-way work in a specific area, they'll probably be looking at roadway improvements also, I would imagine.
Okay, great, thank you. So in regards to the requested modifications, actually, glad to hear that this area, it's being removed and it's being pulled back. This note here, 21, actually says it's a new roof structure over bar to be permitted under separate. So I was unclear.
David didn't have his coffee.
Yeah,
I was unclear of where the storage structure was. So
no, that isn't.
that's
a
fine
double
because
note.
it is on this. It is on a different plan, but just looking at this one.
Here it's called out for the utility room to be demolished.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I know I've traveled down this road quite a bit, and have always wondered how the building was built so close to the intersection there. So that answers that question. So I'm glad that that part's removed, because if it was included in, wouldn't be inclined to support it. In regards to the as-built additions towards the rear, the north side, I guess, of the property, it does impinge kind of on the public setting. However, when you look at the pictures, it's more in regards. There's a good one. I mean, did you show more pictures? No, or here's one here. The addition does follow the line of the building, and it's actually that little area that pops out into it. So I think in terms of zoning wise, and it's nice to hear that Public Works would support the building location for the encroachment permit, that giving it as a commercial district. I realize C2 requires a 10-foot setback, but it isn't on the main road, and your modification request that you are requesting along the main road is for enhancing pedestrian access. So I could support the modification in the back. I agree with design review in terms of making it look better. That'll be an improvement, but that's not my purview. It's design review, and you need to get clearance zoning-wise before you can proceed to make it prettier. So I can support the requested modification to allow the as-built improvements to remain as they are.
Thank you.
And so you've read the condition that was included in the staff report. It just has to do with the in-person commitment. You're fine with that. I don't believe any additional conditions are required by me. The design review, it is a requirement, so whether I put a condition that you work with them or not, it's
It's going to have to happen anyway.
yeah. So I don't feel an additional condition is necessary. So I'll make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve the requested modifications with the condition in the staff report. And my action is appealable to the planning commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before then, they could follow it up during that same 10-day period. And if that happens, Tony or Suzanne will contact you.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Thanks,
Yes.
Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So the last items, 718, 728 North Ontario. Did you get a hold of Howard? Well, we could start that.
I'd like to suggest a way to move forward on this. I did think that Mr. Wichita should be here to answer any particular questions, but I'm legal counsel for the association. I'm fairly familiar with the plans, and I think I can answer any questions. I hope so.
Yeah,
If
no,
not,
that's
then-
fine.
Then it would be possible that
There he is.
there's
Here
more
he is, here.
information that I can provide that we can continue for
Sure,
some
yeah.
weeks, but I think that...
Oh, no, he's there.
How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I can hear projects without the applicant here. I like giving them as much chance to get here as possible. But Mr. Wichita is here now. But if he wasn't, I would have listened and made an action.
Well, I hope I would have been able to answer any of your questions. But,
Okay,
we've got
great.
the
Thank
expert
you.
here.
I thought it was at 10 o'clock. I wrote it down wrong on my calendar, so.
That's fine.
You going to join us, James? As well take a look. Okay. Are these working?
Yes.
Anytime you're ready, Renee.
Okay, so this project is located at 718 to 728 North Voluntario Street. It's a 6-unit condominium project. As you see here, that's the outline of the property boundaries. And the area proposed for some improvements are focused right here on the 718 to 720 North Voluntario units. The Homeowners Association is proposing to replace a storm drain that runs along this property boundary. And as a result of that, some information was learned about some improvements that had been made in these rear yards of these 2 condominium units. And as part of the storm drain project, they need to remove decks that were built in that area and then want to build them back. And so I'll show on this, well, I'll get to that in a moment. So the scope of improvements include replacing the storm drain, removing an existing wooden deck here and here behind these 2 units, replacing this deck with a concrete patio raised deck type structure, and then rebuilding a wood deck in this area. There's also other improvements proposed that are outside the scope of the requested modification, including some storage areas here, a small sunroom addition here on that unit, and some other improvements throughout the development. So the portions of the project that require modifications of the zoning ordinance standards have to do with the rebuilding of the decks and patios behind these 2 units, and that given the topography of the site and that it slopes to the south here, the resulting patios are more than 10 inches above grade within this setback here. So that's the first requested modification. The second is that, and you could see these more in detail on these sections here. Just to orient you, here's the patio area at 720 North Fall, Ontario here. And here you can see where the storm drain will be, the swale. The patio will be raised here within the setback of about 30 inches in height. It'll drop down, and then when this fence is replaced along the property line, its height in combination with an existing retaining wall on the property exceeds the 8-foot height limit for fences and walls within setbacks. So the rebuilding of this area after the storm drain project will result in a fence and wall combination that exceeds 8 feet in height. Staff can support the two requested modifications. One is just given the topography of the site, in order to create a flat, usable area for these units, we understand the request to want to create that flat area. It results in a grade change that exceeds the height allowed by the zoning ordinance. But with the change in topography and this fence, which is also related to reasons why we can support the modification, it creates some privacy for this unit that if a fence were built here that met the zoning ordinance requirements, it would be somewhat low and could then possibly see into neighboring properties. And even though this existing fence has been here at that relative height for years, even though it wasn't permitted, it's a situation that the both property owners on either side of the property line have been accustomed to. We haven't received complaints. We think in this case with the topographical change, it makes sense to provide some privacy and flat usable area, so we could support those modifications. This photo unfortunately doesn't show. You might have some better photos. This is just from the street that shows the slight change in elevation from the subject property site to the neighbor, but I think you've probably got some better ones that show that change. So with those two requested modifications and the findings outlined in the staff report, we'd recommend that the staff hearing officer approve those in order to allow the storm drain improvement project to move forward.
Okay, great. I'd like to state your name for the record and add any additional comments.
I'm Howard Whittosh. I'm the architect and the civil engineer for the project.
And James Sweeney, legal counsel for the Trace Palmas Homeowners Association.
You explained it pretty well. There's only one possible correction to what you said, and that is that there is no storm drain at the present time. So this would be the installation of a storm drain for the first time, and it is to collect water from the uphill side of Unit 720, where it collects now. And this was really the genesis of the project from the start. I guess we use this one here. There is where is this? Right there is a storm drain. That's actually the area drain. And then the drain line goes around outside the private parcels and is in the setback and also in the Tres Palmas common area. So, and that goes to the street. So that's just a correction. We have both we no longer have a deck drain. We are permeable. And then there is a perforated drain behind the retaining wall to relieve hydrostatic pressure there. So those two drains actually converge and go to the street.
Now, in regards to this here, so
this is a little profile that was sketched to illustrate what's going on between the Unit 720 patio, drop to grade, sloping grade, existing
retaining wall, just
retaining
this
wall.
one here, this little area, so the fence will be in front of it, not on
Right,
top of it.
right. And this is the existing retaining wall, which remains. And then it drops to grade again, and then it slopes down to the driveway on the other property, which is illustrated in the photograph that you have over there. So the change in grade is as indicated, greater than 8 feet.
And have you guys been in contact, I assume since you're on the neighbor's property,
Yes,
you've been in
I
contact with them, and
they have, it's a gated property, so they let you in, and they have known what we're doing, and as far as they're concerned, there's no change to what's already there. It is basically the back of a wood fence, and when we're all done, at the end of the day, it'll be the back of a wood fence with no change in height.
No, not as far as I know. Suzanne did not mention any contact with the neighboring property owner.
Okay, and then this trellis, which is in the setback, that's
Being removed,
and not replaced.
not replaced.
I think those are my questions right now. I'd like to open the public hearing. There's no one in the audience, so we did receive one letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing concerns with the project. So I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site, and I was able to go in the backyard. There's a nice gentleman there who let me go in his backyard. It was 718, so I went and I saw his deck area. And
That's my copy.
yes. And like you said, I was trying to see access to see what potential effects would be from this side. I couldn't really see it clearly, but going into this gentleman's backyard, I think it is an appropriate improvement. The deck, although it does go to the property line, the fence created separation, and then this area, there wasn't. You have a adjacent property outline?
Adjacent what?
Adjacent building footprint of
I
adjacent.
don't have the outline of the basically building on the adjacent property shown. I do know that there is a residence here, and then there's another two-story residence in the back.
Yeah, my recollection was that it was a low structure, and there was
Yes.
maybe a small window.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think the
It's
encroach.
actually very down. It's down low, much
Yeah.
lower than the fence.
Yeah,
They look at the fence, not the window.
right. And so, my belief is that the neighbor would want this fence. It didn't seem like it was out of line in terms of its height, and that it mainly is to protect the privacy of the next door neighbor here. And so, if the fence wasn't here, even without the deck, you'd want some kind of separation so that the neighbor could have privacy. So,
Right.
I think the proposed improvements are appropriate.
This is actually a demolition plan.
Yeah, I was just turning the page to see what
This is what's proposed here.
yeah, or we can just go back to the So, in regards to the overheight wall, or fence wall combination, that is an appropriate improvement. It provides privacy for both properties, the off-site one as well as the two condominium units. It is their backyard. It functions as their backyard. People want an area that's secured and private. The decks, it does provide for a usable area adjacent to the condos, and they're not extremely elevated. They're 30 inches max above grade. So I could support both of the requested modifications. Staff's not proposing any conditions. I don't think I need to add any conditions. That trellis is going to be removed and not replaced. And if it was proposed to be replaced, it would need its own modification. So it's not part of the project. So I'll approve your project, subject to the findings outlined in the staff report. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. We also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could follow it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if that was to occur, Renee or Suzanne would contact you.
Do we have a copy of the staff report?
It's online.
Is it online?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't receive it, or I can. I don't.
I have it.
You have it? If you could send it to me.
Yeah.
again.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, and also thanks for switching the sequence around so that I could be here.
Yeah, I try to do that if applicants, because the design review boards or planning commission, there's so many of them. When all of them talk, the items take a lot longer, and it's just one person, and so it's average about 10 minutes. So I usually bump them to the end, and if they don't show up, I'll still hear the item. The applicant doesn't necessarily need to be present, but I always like to give the opportunity to have a representative here.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I
Thank
adjourn
you
the
both.
meeting.